Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone. Welcome everyone in the chat and any moderators and or channel members out there, and to anyone that's listening to the replay, thanks for joining in. And if you're listening on audio only, welcome and thanks for tuning in. We have a really fun show planned for you guys here today that I've been looking forward to. We're going to figure out a lot of things, and we're going to figure out where the whole tinfoil hat stuff comes from with TOPLOBSTA, the Raven, are here from the NephilimDeathSquad to bring chaos, insights, and laughter, and of course, some Nephilim. Welcome, gentlemen. How's it going?
Hey, what's up, man? You didn't tell me we were going to bring laughter. I didn't come prepared for laughter. Let me pull up those notes really quickly.
Just the notes on comedy. Does anybody have the notes on comedy?
Notes? What's up, man? Thanks for having us. This is going to be fun. This is we're going to spread as much as possible.
Yes.
We're going to blur the lines of truth and reality, and hopefully somebody catches us in the lie. Hopefully they don't, but they probably will. So I'm excited to just hop right into this. David, what are we doing, man?
I don't know exactly what we're doing, but thank you, Ryder Lee, for having us. Yeah, we're going to work out something here on your show. We actually just did a bit of content on it. We've had a secret that we've been keeping. And, you know, within the conspiracy community, if you happen to uncover something that you think is compelling and nobody else is talking about it, it then becomes a mad rush to try to produce and disseminate that to people before that idea gets spread. Because sometimes I think they're like alive. It's like as soon as you have a good idea, somebody else gets that idea. Then the race is on. So,
bro, every single time that happens, dude, every time I have a really good idea and I don't do it, it's so weird. I've had this happen so many times. I have a really good idea and I don't act on it. Sometimes the next day or even the next week, somebody is doing that exact thing that I had an idea to do.
Well, we had that similar experience, Ryder, where we came up with this and we realized what we stumbled on. And if it's real, then we really have to figure this out quick, and we got to make sure we present it the right way. And less than a week later, all of a sudden, Ian Carroll is talking about something adjacent to what we're going to talk about here today. And so the race is on. As soon as that happened, we had to get out and start cranking out the content and explaining what's been knocking around in our mind.
And you know what's funny about this? So the idea of us having this idea, working it out, like we were calling each other. We did like not an episode about it, but we hinted at it, and people were starting to put stuff together. We finally spoke about it. We do a show with this guy Clint Russell of Liberty Lockdown. It's called Dangerous Retards. What up? And it's like a political show and like current events and stuff. But I was like, listen, I got to tell you about this, about these kids. So I started telling them about it. And then a couple days later, Ian Carroll picks it up. But the subject of this show and the subject of like what we've been looking at, he actually speaks about this. And this was something that we didn't cover in our deep dive of this man, Andrija Puharich. So this is the guy that we're going to get into. I don't even know if I should jump the gun, but I'm going to jump the gun here. So he wrote a book called Beyond Telepathy, and he speaks about this thing called plasma. And I know this is like, since we're jumping in like cold feet right into the deep end, it's like going to be a little confusing to navigate you through these waters. But he describes plasma as like a fundamental component of consciousness responsible for the psychic phenomenon. And that's like the first half of this book is just completely about plasma. And it's kind of out there. I think that's what it is. When you have that idea and it's in the ether, it's in the plasma, people start to pick up on it if they're tuned in the right way. So apologies to Ian Carroll if I was a little bit upset with you at first. I don't think you per se, I don't think you jacked our, but I do think that you're tuned into the plasma.
Yes.
And
didn't a similar thing happen when the telephone was created? It was like somebody on like the other side of the country with no connection to the original developer also within a pretty reasonable time frame created a secondary telephone. So I don't know. It's like these things happen and all of a sudden they permeate this, I don't know what you call it, the Akashic Records, collective consciousness. I don't know if you subscribe to that sort of a thing, but it does seem that ideas are much more than just this thing that takes place in your mind. They're almost more like something that you tune into. So yeah, hopefully we can get this out before anybody else tunes in.
Doubt
Well,
it.
you also, I think it's like kind of like an infinite data field of like information that's just around us. And some people refer to that as the Akashic record. But I think that there's these ideas that are out there, and then certain people can tune into them. But then it's like, I don't know if they're getting it all at once or if like several people all at the exact same time, or if someone passes on an idea, then it goes to the next person. I don't really know
Yeah,
exactly how it
it's
works.
almost like the idea is alive and it's going to people and it's asking to be presented. It needs we are the conduit by which it enters this realm, and it's trying to see like who's going to do it, who's going to talk about me. Is it going to be these people? And for a second, that idea knocked on Nephilim Death Squad's door, and that I think we were just a little bit too slow. But to that point, and it knocked on Ian Carroll's door, and then it lit a fire under our ass. But to your point about this like idea of almost, it's like they're interacting with us. I was just driving back to the gym after our last episode that we just did maybe a couple of hours ago. And it's a two-parter episode, this topic that we're going to bring you today. So we're going to give you like an abridged version. But the question becomes, after you present the theory, to what end? What happens? Where is this all going? And I didn't quite have an answer for that until I was driving to the gym. And it hit me like somebody threw a rock at my head, to the point where I had to stop driving, pull out my phone, call Top, and say, I think I figured it out. I don't think I figured out anything. I think they just come knocking when they're ready.
Yeah, well, this was the idea of this is a previous episode, one of the first episodes we did on Nephilim Death Squad with this guy Jerry Marzinski, and
Love Jerry.
yeah, great dude. He's been on the show twice. He came on the second time with one of his ex-patients that kind of gave his testimony about how he recovered from, and basically Jerry's whole thing is not a mental disorder per se, but it's entities that we are perceiving through our heads, like a radio wave, which pertains very much to what we're going to be talking about. I know we're just like, this is foreplay. We're going to get to it, Ryder. Just give us a second. We're trying to set the table. But
30 minutes of foreplay at least. That's the standard amount for. That's what I've heard. That's what I've been told. Doctors, 30 minutes of foreplay.
But yeah, it's necessary.
trust the science, whatever. So Jerry, he thinks that not many of your thoughts, if any, are your own. I think he said like 85% or something
Upwards
like that.
Of 80 to 85% of the thoughts that pass through your mind are not yours. That's what he says.
Yeah, which might make a little bit of sense here, touching on this subject. But are you guys ready to like look at this guy and get into this thing?
Let's look at him. Oh, wait, you have a picture of him? Because he is a staggering kind of a character to look at. He's got a visage about him.
I can pull one up.
Puharich. But yeah, very much ready. This guy, he ends up becoming almost a starting point for so many things that plague us today, right? When it comes to, I would say, like the program all the way to UAP disclosure and the alien abduction phenomenon. Like all of these things tie in. It's kind of like we're here to present you the theory of everything, almost. And so, Top, where do you want to start with Andrija? Yeah, can we put up a picture of him? He looks very cool, doesn't he? He looks like an old-timey, Wild West scientist. Back when scientists were considered like cowboys or superstars. It's my understanding that we went through this time in American history where scientists were regarded as like rock stars. And we've certainly moved away from that these days, but this guy is a remnant, right? He's an echo of a time where scientists were rock stars. And when the paranormal and the supernatural were not pseudoscience, they were a legitimate field of study. So much to the extent that this man dedicated, a disproportionate amount of time and resources to that study.
Yeah, he looks like a shoemaker or like a hoof maker or a horse hoof maker or something.
He looks exactly like what you'd expect, like this old-timey kind of scientist, but people don't necessarily know where to put him. They're like, he's a scientist, he's an experimenter, he's evil. It's kind of all these things. He's just doing things.
He won't be put in a box. That's what he is. He will not be put in a box. And he keeps, what he is? He's kind of like the granddaddy of conspiracy theorists in the sense that, you were talking about the tinfoil hat, and maybe that's a good place to start, just to show how the tinfoil hat goes all the way back to Puharich. He's like our mascot, as conspiracy theorists.
Well,
Top, do you want to elaborate on that?
So there are, I guess it's not like misconceptions, but there are different stories about where the tinfoil hat came from. You told us one in the pre-chat. I don't know if you want to tell it again, because I've never heard that one.
Yeah, this is where I thought that it came from because I didn't know about this Puchari, Porridge guy that you're talking about. Uh, so Paul Benowitz in 1978, he lived in New Mexico, and he lived right next to an Air Force base, and he thought that he was seeing UFOs, like aliens, UFOs, but it was right next to an Air Force base, so it's advanced Air Force technology that he was seeing, that he was misidentifying as UFOs, right? So then he contacts the Air Force and he's like, "Hey, I'm seeing these really strange, weird crafts," and they take him in for like a briefing, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's pretty interesting what you got there, Paul." Which I'm giving you the short version. There's way more to the story. I'm just giving you the cliff notes so we can move through it. So then the Air Force is like, "That's some really interesting stuff you got there, Paul." And then they end up getting him in contact with this guy named Richard Doty. I don't know if you guys are familiar with who Richard Doty is. He's an Air Force Office of Special Investigations, essentially a dis and misinformationalist. So they sent him to Paul Benowitz's house and essentially convinced him that what he was seeing was indeed alien craft, and the NSA actually broke into his home and replaced his laptop with an NSA modified laptop to convince him that he's communicating with aliens.
So awesome.
And a lot of the stuff that we hear about within the community today came from the NSA talking to Paul Benowitz through his laptop, which had him convinced that it was aliens and not really the NSA. Things like the government signed a contract with extraterrestrials, and they created this base in New Mexico where humans and extraterrestrials work together. That they're here for our resources, like just an array of things that's permeated throughout the community, and it got to such a big point where Paul is so like paranoid and like essentially traumatized because the NSA had his house bugged, the Air Force had his house bugged, the police had his house bugged. It was like this huge thing that was going on, and this was all just to play with Paul Benowitz's mind to get him off the track that the craft that he was seeing was that it wasn't military technology, that it was aliens. And he already believed that it was aliens because he had never seen anything like it before. But it was really advanced military technology. And it got to this point where he got so paranoid that he would essentially tinfoil out everything in his home. He got in contact with this gentleman, the psychiatrist from Wyoming called Leo Sprinkle, that came down to his house to regress this woman that I got in contact with him, that claimed that she was being abducted by aliens, that aliens were shooting laser beams into her home and abducting her and everything. And he would only do these regressions, like Paul would only want Sprinkle to do the regressions inside of his Cadillac that had completely been tinfoiled out in his garage.
It's a cool Cadillac, dude. Imagine owning that Cadillac. I would pay good money to have
like
his tinfoil covered Cadillac.
Greg Carlwood of the Higher Side Chats has I think it's a Prius. I don't know what it was.
But no, it's like SUV. It was an SUV, dog. Don't
some kind of car, but it's wrapped. It's got a full wrap with like a repeating logos of the Higher Side Chats when he pulled up to Sam Tripoli's show. And I just think Sam Tripoli needs like a literal tinfoil hat car.
100%.
Crinkly tinfoil hat.
Either that or he needs a car with like an actual tinfoil hat on it. You know what I mean? Like a big pointy one.
Just a you got crunched up one. All right, so let's get into that. So that guy's in 1978, you said?
Yeah, it's 78, 79 is the area. But I'm guessing that your guy is way further back, correct?
He's further back, but it's similar.
There's more, though, because in 1971, there's more. Because it keeps popping up, and it's hard to put your finger on where exactly tinfoil hat was originated. So in 71, this guy, Leonard Kill, this comes from our friend Control Alt History.
Yes.
He's the man. His stuff on YouTube is really good. He does like these deep dives. But this dude, Leonard Kill, in 1971, he was one of the people that developed the Kodak camera. He was somebody. I guess he might have patented it or something like that. There was some kind of discrepancy. They went after him. They tried to call him crazy, and it turns out he was a little bit crazy. He was an eccentric dude. But the story goes on to say that he was I think he was having headaches or something like that, and he ended up having a brain surgery. In 71, this was just a thing. They implanted a chip in his head. He went crazy. The story goes he's in a mental institution and he started to wrap his head in tinfoil, right? So we have the origination of this foreign object going into someone's brain through surgery and remaining in his brain. So that's like people say, oh, tinfoil hat, that's where it comes from. It goes even further back. It goes to this motherfucker, Andrija Puharich, and what he was doing. So let me tell you a little bit about him. He comes out of nowhere. He's born in Croatia in 1918. He's a physician, inventor, parapsychologist, and he's not Jewish. I wrote that down for whatever reason. He went to Northwestern University in 1947, and he specialized in neurophysiology with regarding electrical impulses in the brain and body. He joined the military service like early 50s or late 40s, right around 50s, because this guy pops up on the main scene in 51.
Yeah,
he was
which
stationed
is, by the way, you're going to see that time frame pop up a lot
everywhere. Yeah,
during this. So just keep that in mind. We're talking like 45 to 55.
So what's significant about that is so a lot of people do have a military background, and we're usually suspicious and we joke around, but this dude was located at Edgewood Arsenal facility. That's where he was. I don't know if you know anything about this place, but I have a crazy list here about what they were doing here. It was a military base where they were just evaluating the impact of low dose chemical agents on the military personnel.
Yep.
So for like 20 years, they were
some
doing
of the
this.
first programs was that right there.
Ooh, Ryder,
Correct.
You just
So,
stepped in it. There you
bingo. Yeah. So this guy's there in the late 40s, early 50s, and was developed, I think, in like 53 or something like that. But this is all a direct line, and we can point right at this guy. He's doing it. But anyway, in Edgewood Arsenal, they are messing with LSD, benzodiazepines. Shout out to Jordan Peterson. THC derivatives like K2. Like this is some of our favorite things.
These are a few of our favorite
things. Yeah, CS gas, like riot control nerve agents, mustard gas, nerve agents. I can't even say this word, cholinesterase inhibitors, and other psychochemicals. This is what they were doing for years there. And this guy, he happens to go to college to study this stuff and electrical impulses in the brain, happens to go into the military where he lands in this place, Edgewood Arsenal. Not suspicious at all.
Right. And by the way, Ryder, that, these things were lent to the very beginnings of it. Like this is going to be another theme that we're constantly going to dance around during this discussion.
Yeah.
Well, they would also use, like you were talking about CS gas, they would essentially take a highly potent version of LSD, which was called BZ. I don't know if you guys have looked into this or not, but they would take BZ out in these giant canisters, and they would do like outfield simulations where they would have the soldiers go out into a field and they would just bust open all these giant barrels of BZ and let it go across the freaking field and hit all of the soldiers that were out there testing. Then they would go out and grab them, take them into the building, and then ask them all kinds of weird, strange, crazy questions, and they would basically go out of their mind.
Can I just say, it must have been such a cool time to be involved in like science and military intelligence. Like, man, that's cool. You get to be the guy who cracks open the barrel and then runs. Like, I want to be that guy. That's cool. How much do they pay that guy?
Yeah, nowadays they're just like, hey, you want to your penis? Like,
well, now they don't even do it, because it used to happen in like this controlled environment. Now they're just doing it to us on scale, right?
Yeah.
So there's nobody. Now the best is you get to be the guy who flies the plane, who sprays the chemicals. It's not as cool.
Well, a lot of those guys, they made it seem like that didn't even happen to them. Like, so all of the test people that went to that area that got tested, I think there was an army to begin with, and then it kind of spread out all over the place. But then they kind of went back and like wiped their record of them ever being at that facility, and they wouldn't admit that they went through these tests, but they had all these memories of them going through these weird and strange chemical testing.
Makes you wonder what they found.
It makes you wonder why this guy wasn't wiped from being at Edgewood Arsenal and everything else he does. Because when we start to lay this out for you, you're going to be like, that's not true. Because it's everything that you think and talk about all day long. It's this guy doing this. It's wild. So, all right, he goes to Edgewood Arsenal. He comes out, starts doing testing immediately. And one of the first things that he was working on, which it got a patent, he got a U.S. patent granted in 1961, but he was working on this much earlier, was this dental implant technology. So basically, it was like think of like a hearing aid, but in your tooth. They replace your tooth, and this has some sort of like metals in it, and it'll like connect to your jawbone, and then just send frequencies and vibrations to make you feel like you're hearing stuff. So this guy was working on that for what I don't even know why they would grant this a patent. I don't know why they would think this is a good idea, but the guy was doing this stuff. On a side tangent, L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, he had a dental procedure around the 50s. After that, he almost died on the table during it, and then he started getting the inspiration to create Dianetics and then Scientology in 1953.
Right. So
Holy
I just want
crap.
to interject for a second.
I can't prove it. I can't prove that that Puharich was involved, but I can prove that this guy almost died on the table of a dental operation, and then was in contact with aliens from outer space, and he creates an entire religion that still exists today. That is basically a honeypot for celebrities. So you put that where you will. That's like extreme speculation on my end. I'll admit that, but little weird.
Right. Well, where Top is saying like we don't know why or what the point is. I mean, we can only speculate as to why or what the point is, and that speculation has a lot to do with the fact that theme keeps popping up. This dental implant, this receiving of frequencies, and then this communication with entities comes up over and over and over again. And by the end of this, I think the audience is going to be just as crazy as we are.
So this is where you get the story from, I guess, about the tinfoil hat. There's another dude that he was investigating that had something. He had like a dental filling. I think this might come around the time of his invention with this tooth thing. Another dude with a dental filling, and he's going crazy. He went to a mental institution because he's hearing voices in his head, and Puharich shows up again to investigate. This is corroborated, or at least it's tangentially told with the story of Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy. I have a video. I don't know if you want to watch this, but it's a little bit long, but you guys can find it. Just Lucille Ball, Japanese spy communications. You can look that up on YouTube.
It's a wild story, actually.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware, because the implications of this are like, oh, Lucille Ball helped us to avoid some sort of real war issue with Japan. Like it's a very strange situation. And we're going to end up coming back to it too, but if we want to just give a quick overview, Top, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Basically what happens is Lucille Ball goes for, routine dental surgery, and then the next thing you know, she's having some sort of, and I think it was just a filling. She's suddenly picking up music in her car, and she can't identify where the music is coming from. And then all of a sudden she realizes it's coming from inside her mouth. And we've seen this plot device, by the way, play out in all sorts of cartoons, right? You see this in cartoons a lot, especially old-timey cartoons, because back in the day, we're talking like Looney Tunes and such. This thing was still kind of a talking point. And she realizes that, it's music, and she even recognizes the melody. And so she goes and she's told by somebody who says like, oh, did you happen to have a dental implant recently? She goes, yeah, I did. And it turns out that this thing is picking up this frequency. Now, at some point, Lucille Ball actually goes on to pick up some sort of like muttered communication. Turns out that there was Japanese insurgents, having radio communications in a covert way that Lucille Ball was able to pick up on. And then because of that, our own military was able to use that information to intercept the situation.
Crazy.
That is really crazy. Really, really crazy.
And of course, so it's like, oh my God, Ryder, this is all happening at the same time. I'm listening to this where I initially
what year
picked
was
up
that, Top? That was like
in the 50s.
In the 50s.
Yeah,
it's early 50s.
All around the same time. But I first picked this up on the telepathy tapes. They're talking about this. So I was like, what the hell? And then they immediately mention Andrija Puharich right after. They're like, oh, by the way, there's a guy who was working on some, he found Lucille Ball's case interesting. And he was also looking at a guy that went crazy in a mental institution. And he had some kind of dental implant, and it has something to do with the type of metal that they were using at the time for the filling. It was picking up radio signals. So this might have been where he either got the idea of how to do it or intervened and actually like started just putting this thing in people's mouths. I don't. It's not clear.
You got to see this from our like point of view, though, Ryder. It's like we stumble upon Puharich and we go, this guy, and we'll establish it as we do this show, is like kind of the mascot for conspiracy theories, and not a lot of people are talking about him. People are aware of him, but not to the degree that he's so like connected to all of this conspiracy lore, and then all this, and we dedicate an entire episode to him. It's an NDS deep dive where we talk specifically about Puharich and, you know, how he's integrated into all of these different aspects of conspiracy theory. And then all of a sudden, this is, you know, and we're not going to get straight into it yet, but I get this feeling that there's something happening with the telepathy tapes, something that we don't quite understand, and that there is a deception within it. And I can't help but shake this feeling to the extent that I call Top. And to Top's credit, when we have an idea, Top is like the action guy. As soon as I tell him something and he sees that it's like, yeah, I think you're right, he will dive into it and start digging, right? And so I get a call like, I don't know, a half an hour later or something like that, or later on in the day, and he goes, hey, listen to episode, we lost Top there for a second, listen to episode 3 and listen to the first 5 minutes. And I listened to the first 5 minutes, and all of a sudden Puharich, the guy who we just did a deep dive on, is name dropped in this podcast that I just got a weird feeling about. The whole thing is like serendipitous, the way that we sort of stepped in this. Hold on a second. Let me see if he said anything. Okay, he's going to have to refresh his computer there.
I haven't listened to the telepathy tapes. I've heard people talking about them and how they're so great and how everything is going on. I just haven't. I don't know enough about it, but I guess they explain everything within the tapes or something. I don't.
So the telepathy tapes, and I'll just kind of go on this until Top comes back. I don't know how much we're going to unpack right at this point in the show, but more or less what happens is the parents, several parents of non-verbal autistic children who have been told by the medical industry that their children are simply not in there. And you know, that's devastating to a parent. And so a lot of these parents don't take the medical industry's, you know, information as gospel. They kind of stick to this idea of like, no, my child is in there. And through one series of events or another, they end up realizing that these children can communicate, but in a very non-traditional way. It seems that they can communicate through telepathy. So what happens is, I believe her name is Kai Dickens, along with a doctor, I forget what her name is. They start to pursue these stories and go and have communications with these families. And a lot of it just happens through like video calls at first. But you have, you know, one girl from Mexico. Her name is Mia, and her parents are basically showing on this video recording to this doctor that what essentially happens is the parents can think of a number. And the children, though they're nonverbal, through I think it's like supported typing or something like that. It's a method of typing where nonverbal autistic children won't really engage with the keyboard, but apparently they found that some of them, if they guide their hand a little bit, and that even sounds sketchy, right? Guiding their hand because okay, Top's back, by the way, you can pop them in. They will touch their hand maybe at the wrist, and this will enable them to start the typing process. And then to alleviate that suspicion of like you're touching a child by the wrist, you might be guiding them. They eventually move that touch all the way up to the arm, and they move it all the way up to the shoulder. And some of them even touch them in the center of the forehead. And then somehow this nonverbal autistic child is engaging with this keyboard and predicting the numbers that the parents are thinking exclusively. Now, of course, this is just in a video call environment, so there's a lot of studies that need to be done still, but they then go on to do those studies. Top, I was just explaining a little bit about what the telepathy tapes are because Ryder actually hasn't seen them, which, you know, previous to that gut feeling that I had, Ryder, I also had not seen them, but I was like, I don't know, suspicious of them. It just seems strange to me, to be honest, that something that was typically dismissed as pseudoscience, not that I ever did that, but certainly the scientific community at large dismissed it that way, would all of a sudden become the #1 podcast in the world after Joe Rogan blows it up. And so, but we're going to end up probably.
Well, we're in the golden age, Raven. Don't you know? We're in the golden age of humanity, dude.
That's right. The Kali Yuga is ending, and now we are all going to spiritually ascend, and that means that information and gnosis, all of that is coming our way. So very much looking forward to that. Top, did you want to go there yet, though, or do you want to unpack some other stuff before we start going into telepathy tapes? Also, you're muted. Still, oh, there we go.
All right, we're good. I don't really know how to tell this story, to be honest, because it's like it's all over the place and it's constantly interrupted by this guy Andrija Puharich. So, but I feel like it is when you get to a certain point, you're like, well, we kind of have to talk about the telepathy tapes now. Like with this Lucille Ball point is a very interesting point to be like, okay, but now the #1 podcast in the world, or at least for a time, and it's still being talked about by Rogan, is talking about this in a weird way. They're just like, she's briefly like just brushing it, because there's a couple of ways you can go. Either she doesn't understand and can't put together the pieces, or they have a better idea and they have a narrative to push. So this piece doesn't fit with their narrative.
I'm thinking that a good way to start to get into this would be, we've already established that Puharich is operating pretty much at the end of World War II and the very beginnings of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a line that we've discovered that shows like the program would have had a vested interest in, especially that sort of, voice of God technology, this ability to project radio waves and frequencies at a human being and have them perceive them audibly. And so the dental implant was kind of like the initiator to that. But I think it's also worth noting that during Operation Paperclip, where we took over all these scientists right after World War II, right at the beginning of this program, a lot of their research, Mengele's research and things like that, he was obsessed with like the psychic connection between twins and all of these horrifying experiments that he would engage in to try to provoke in one way or another these latent psychic abilities. A lot of that research goes into the beginnings of the program. So now this is where things get really strange.
Well, let's take another detour. So
okay,
we go from we're going to Lucille Ball to this guy's patient that he was seeing in a mental institution, all having to do with a tooth implant that are picking up radio waves and going crazy. This is why we say it's like the origination of the tinfoil hat. That's kind of where this comes from. It's this technology, almost 100%. It was put in a guy's brain. Apparently it can just be put in your house, and they can disseminate these waves, and voice to God technology make you go crazy.
By the way, I just want to say to people, Top, when they do the big fake alien disclosure and they start talking in your mind when they arrive and their motherships appear in the sky, wrap your head in tinfoil, because it actually seems to work. They just they want you to think it's a joke.
M. Night Shyamalan knows what's up. Signs, you remember that scene where they're all wrapped in tinfoil? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yes.
There's a little bit of disclosure there, something to tell you. It may be something to do with water. I don't know. Keep your eyes open for that. But
what I had always heard, like back in the day, to not get, when you're getting your tooth, like a cavity filled or whatever, to not get the silver or whatever it was that they filled the cavities with. Now I don't think that they do the silver anymore at all, period. You have to
That's
get
because it's not necessary anymore, Ryder, and we're going to get to that too.
Now it's like clear. It's like a clear paste that they just like drill in there and then put it on. Maybe this is the reason why people don't like dentists. I don't like the dentist. Nobody likes the dentist.
I don't like the dentist either. I also don't think that we need to get our wisdom teeth removed, but that's a whole nother thing.
I don't think so either, but I unfortunately did.
Me too, dude. I let them, I never went to the dentist or the doctor, and then in 1 year, as a father and a husband, I was like, it's probably time to take care of my health. And then I came out of that year only having one testicle because they took one, and not having my wisdom teeth because they ripped those out too.
Damn, they took your testicle too?
Well, I had cancer. I discovered that I had cancer, or I don't know. I don't know if I really had cancer. I think that guy was just collecting balls. So, joke's on me. Don't go to the doctors. Okay, all right.
Well, there's this one cult from the 90s that claimed that you had to your testicles to be a part of the cult, to give it to the extraterrestrials to fuel their ship.
That's where
Whoa.
my testicle is. My urologist gave it to the aliens, and now somebody's flying around on my dime,
And they're
which is great. That's excellent. Okay, so where I was going,
Edward Malik is the guy's name. Edward
Ed-
Malik. I can't think of the name of the cult, but yeah,
he's the
that's
guy
what he
that
believed.
was
Yeah.
taking balls for aliens.
Yep.
UFO fuel
I need
is
to
stored
have a
in the
word with
balls. Who knew?
All right, so
Oh, the other side here. This is another interesting thing that we picked up from our friend Control Old History. So again, 1950s. This guy's running around. He's popping up. He's visiting people. He's going places. He's just moving and shaking. Probably doing some stuff with I don't know, doing some shitty things in his spare time. But he pops up in Brazil again. This is just another story that this guy was telling us about a guy named Dr. Arrigo. Original name Jose Pedro de Freitas. He was born in the 20s in Brazil, and he was a taxi driver, just like a regular dude. At that time, probably couldn't even read in Brazil. I mean, most of the people there can't read now. So I can't imagine he was educated at all. But in the 1950s, he claims that he channels an entity, and the entity is named Dr. Fritz. It's a dead German surgeon. And he opens up his own practice in Brazil, and he starts to perform surgeries. They called him
while channeling this dude.
Yeah, while channeling Dr. Fritz. They called him the doctor of the rusty knife. He was using tools like kitchen knives, scissors, and other rusty instruments to remove tumors, extract cataracts from people's eyes, and also just giving them overall advice, which by all accounts helped. There are documentaries about it. There's videos on YouTube of him doing these surgeries.
They made a movie. In 2022, a movie came out about him. So only 3 years ago, they're making movies about this guy.
Yeah, he's like, so there's videos of him removing, I guess, tumors from people, and there's like minimal bleeding, rapid recovery. It's all on 8mm film, but it's out there. You can check it out. And of course, your boy on vacation, he shows up. He's like, "Yo, what are you doing over here?" And Andrija Puharich is there, and he's like, "Yeah, this guy's legit." And then he flies back to America, and that's it. I was just like, "What? Wait, what did you say?" Like when he told us that, because I'm like, who was there? Is like Andrija Puharich just showed up, confirmed what he was doing, and said, "Yep, that's in line. See you later." So it's like, so now the through line becomes a little bit more clear to us, because we're putting together that picture of what this guy is, what he does, and it's like, all right, he's an investigator, he's an inventor, he's some sort of scientist, but he's also involved with this woo stuff and like telepathy.
I've been describing him as like he's kind of like the paranormal scientific community's Nick Fury, right? Because he also does the same thing. He goes and checks out that doctor who's channeling that spirit, but he also goes and checks out Uri Geller, who is the spoon bending, telekinesis kind of a character.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff about whether or not the spoon is made out of a certain material that is, once you warm it up, it's got a lower melting point than like another type of metal. But the point is, Puharich finds this guy interesting and is going and seeking him out. And so they end up having a ton of interactions together. Whatever this guy is, he suddenly has the funds to travel all around the world and sort of try to collect psychic avengers in very many ways. So the question becomes then, who the hell is backing this guy? He's got all this time and this money where he can just pursue these things that are probably fruitless if you're not doing them with the backing of an intelligence agency. You know what I mean? Because the scientific community at large dismisses that. So there is a shady wing of the scientific community that is exploring that. Think the men who stare at goats, right? We're talking about our Central Intelligence Agency having a vested interest in the psychic phenomenon, and that is going to play a huge theme in this.
Well, yes, that's again points right back at this dude.
The CIA wasn't. The CIA didn't have a psychic program. They were funding psychic research in a psychic program.
Right.
It was they were the one that released the documents, but it was the DIA and Army intelligence that was and SRI in the early 70s that were doing all the experiments and using psychics to, collect foreign intelligence data. So
I would say that the precursor to this, though, is all of the events that we're talking about now, because I think psychic phenomenon got on, let's just say, like, colloquially, the government.
What he's talking about is it, too, and we're going to get there. That you're talking about Project Stargate, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, yes. And so many people have researched Project Stargate, but I don't know how you haven't come across his name, because he's one of the guys that received a lot of funding for this. But I think we should get to that a little bit after, because we've got to explain.
Do you want to do the overlap here between Montauk Project and, like, let's say telepathy tapes?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the thing that becomes concerning about the telepathy tapes, because on its face, Ian Carroll said something. He's like, hope is a through line that exists all throughout these stories on the telepathy tapes. And I would agree with that, right? As a parent, you have these nonverbal autistic children. The medical industry is telling you to essentially give up on your child. And all of a sudden, you find that there is some viable means of communication, but it far exceeds what the medical or the scientific community is willing to accept. So there is hope, and this is kind of a beautiful thing. Or is it, right? So what I start thinking about is, well, how do these children become autistic, right? And we're not going to talk about it in depth on the show because it's a very dangerous topic. So I'll try to speak colloquially, but essentially, my mind goes to all of the potential damages from, right? And we're not going to talk about those medical interventions because we're on YouTube. But everybody knows that, you know, anecdotally, there's a large and growing community of people on the internet who are the parents of children who are autistic or nonverbal autistic, who speculate that they would have been fine except for one childhood medical intervention. Okay, so we have the project. Let's put that to the side. The project, you can kind of wrap it up or summarize it as an attempt to create or exploit dissociative identity disorders, possibly through, and whether or not that took place before the project intercepted them or if it happened at the behest of the project, doesn't matter. The creates a dissociative identity disorder. Now, that opens the door to a couple of things. One is, how suggestible does that make a person? Can you program them, right? So I'm talking about, you know, think about what the hell's the name of that Kubrick film?
Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange. You sit them in a chair, you strap their eyeballs open, you inundate them with LSD or some other psychedelic, and you expose them to inducing propaganda, right? You also have the idea of, like, Johns from and dosing them with LSD to see, you know, what that brings to fruition. And then there's the
Midnight Climax.
Yes, thank you. Midnight Climax is the name of that operation. And then you have the sensationalized version, which I think there's probably a lot of truth in, of the Montauk Project, or at least that's what they drew inspiration from to create Stranger Things, right? And Stranger Things is a piece of fiction, but worth looking at here. At the root, it's very much the same thing. You're taking children and you're traumatizing them to do what? To expose latent psychic abilities, right? And there's a lot of truth in fiction, and that's a lot of what people speculate was actually happening there. I think that's also correlates pretty well with the idea, if you're thinking about demonic possession. Who is the most vulnerable to, like, demonic possession? I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but just follow me.
People that have
Children in particular, whoever. So what I'm seeing here in these telepathy tapes is I'm seeing children who are being traumatized. Now, whether or not that's purposeful or anything like that, put that to the side. They're traumatized in the sense that after this medical intervention, they become nonverbal autists. Essentially, they are locked in a body that will not do their bidding. You have no choice in that instant but to disassociate, right? And all of a sudden, disassociation begets some latent psychic ability.
You're touching on something that I've been talking about for a minute.
Really?
A minute, yeah. Once I read all of the documents, I went through them all, and I realized what the program was really about, and it was about activating these people into their psychic abilities, mind fracturing them to create this offshoot of psychic powers. And there was at least 4 to 5 different sub-projects And people that I've talked to about this, they think that they're like, no, it wasn't. No, they weren't trying to unlock psychic abilities. I'm like, well, you can just look through the documents, and you can see that there was at least 5 subprograms of that was literally dedicated to unlocking psychic abilities.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, people want to say that that's fiction, and I think that Stranger Things did a really good job of kind of, galvanizing people to that ideology, that this is just fiction. But like you said, there's a lot of veracity to it. This is a reality. This is something that they were pursuing. Now, it's open to speculation, of course, whether or not they achieve that. And then, of course, the program gets shut down, which I would argue really what happened is they realized that it's viable, and now they can roll it out in scale, right? Because previously, Operation Midnight Climax, you have to go through these Johns and then dosing them and da-da-da-da. But once you get to the point where you realize that this is viable, well, now you can kind of make us free range, patients. And I would argue that that's very much the case right now, because we are constantly propagandized. We carry around our little propaganda device, and we inundate ourselves with inducing media and propaganda all day long. And also, I would say that because of the industry surrounding marijuana, they have increased the THC to such staggering levels that you are in a constant state, because now it's like socially acceptable, and I think more people are smoking weed than ever before. And if you want to smoke weed, that's all fine, but I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying recognize that you are in a constant state of like a low-grade anxiety. And as you're in this constant state of low-grade anxiety, you're just propagandizing yourself with this little scrying mirror, right? Yes. So I think nowadays the program is at scale. It's happening at mass. It's no longer happening in the some underground corner of a deep underground military base where the intelligence operations are happening. It's now happening in your living room.
It almost feels like a weird sort of disclosure by the government, that the telepathy tapes being like well, this is what we've been giving you since 1983, where we formulated a schedule. I'm not going to say the word. And here's what we found. It's like, we found that these kids can see what their mother is doing when she's in the car, and we found that they can communicate with each other on something that they're calling a hill, and they like to. They also they're comparing it to this idea of like CB radio. These guys are they're going within themselves, and they're going to this place where they communicate. But they also mention like, hey, these guys are also communicating with their dead ancestors. They're also communicating with entities. This little girl, Mia, is seeing people in the corner, and she's talking to them. Sometimes she's scared. Sometimes she doesn't like them. Sometimes she will communicate. So it's like all these worlds are just colliding all at once. And it's hard to not look at it and go, well, what is the point of Project MKUltra? What were they trying to do? Because it seems like this is what they're trying to do. And now they have rolled it out in the largest scale possible. Like Germany was not good enough. Now we have a diverse population in America, and we are going to experiment and see what we get. And I think that
too, but we were talking earlier on the last show, Top, where it's like Germany got so far, but I don't think that it was ready for this mass rollout. We needed something. We needed to be like propagandized for generations to accept a particular narrative.
Like if I'm doing the experiment, I want as much diversity as possible. I don't want one specific type of bloodline, because you're not going to get the findings that you're looking for. And this looks like an experiment to me. This looks like they understand what it is. And, it looks, again, and not to defend these people, I think they're out of their mind. It's super nefarious, but they're getting information about the human condition that we wouldn't know otherwise. So like part of me is like,
I don't know. I think we would have known. I think our ancestors had a much better handle on it. I think they were worshiping the wrong entities, but I mean, I do think we had a much better handle on the spiritual realm and these entities that exist in it. And I think that was purposely stripped from us, and we were given materialism and the scientific worldview. And then over time, once we became comfortable with it not existing at all, and they also inundated us with crap they're spraying in the sky, schedules that you have to go through as a child, all of the poison that's in your food. I think this is a ability that exists within all of us, but has been stifled. And I would argue it's been stifled on purpose. But you said something before, Ryder. You said that they no longer use metal in the fillings. And I said because they don't have to, right? Now, the reason I think that they don't have to, much like when the program proved its viability and they rolled it out at scale to the public, The same thing happened in that aspect of the program. And what I mean by that is your teeth, the nerve endings in your teeth are like the most direct ones to your brain, right? All your nerve endings go to your brain, but there's a huge fear that if you get, like my sister-in-law had this happen, something, I forgot what it was exactly, but she was going to get like a brain infection or some crazy shit like that because she had a cavity that had gone too far. So there is a real fear, like if you let your teeth rot out of your head, they're a direct route to your brain, and you can get some real serious infections that way. So in that way, it makes sense to me that they would start at the teeth. But eventually, what's better? What's more viable here? Getting individuals and going through this strenuous thing where you got to drill out their teeth and fill it with some foreign body and yada yada yada, or
and they could just
get
mess
the
it
whole
up
world
with some tinfoil.
yeah, and then they could just mess it up with some tinfoil, right? Or you get the whole country on a medical intervention schedule when they're kids, and the medical intervention has heavy metals in it. And where do the heavy metals settle? Everybody says that they settle in your brain. So I'm wondering here if what we've gotten to the point is like metal's a great conductor. That's why it works to conduct these frequencies and vibrations so that you can now have access to this, voice to skull technology. Well, what happens when we're all getting inundated with it as children multiple times? Because now that schedule's up to like 60 some odd, interventions.
Ridiculous amount of times.
Ridiculous amount, right? So how much heavy metals do we have in our brain? I don't even know. Is it more? And is it more effective than like one piece of metal in a molar? Or
I would
not,
have to say so. Yeah, this is really nuts because this is the exact same type of direction that I went with all this as well. And whenever I read all the documents, that's what took me to looking into the psychic remote viewing DIA Army intelligence stuff, which then brought me to interviewing all of the people that were a part of those programs. So I've had Dr. David Morehouse on, I've had Lynn Buchanan on, I've had Dr. Paul Smith, I've had Dale Graff. Dale Graff was the guy that started the name Stargate. He's the one that came up with the name and named it Stargate. And I think that this stuff, it evolves, just like how remote viewing evolved, and just like how evolved, it's turned into something completely different. And I think that what has happened is that they did this on like human beings, right? And then they were like, okay, well, how do we remove human beings out of the equation? Because human beings are unpredictable. It's very difficult to control human beings unless you got, the metal brain. Unless you're metallizing in your brain, then it's going to be more difficult. But then even then, it's even hard. It's hard to do that because it's so many unpredictable and variables that can happen with that. So how do we take human beings completely out of the equation? Well, what we can do is we can develop a technology to do that. So therefore, we don't have to have psychics remote viewing anymore. We don't have to break down these people psychologically and split their consciousness and make them disassociate. We can wrap this into a freaking technology. And a technology is never going to fail because the technology is a technology. It's robotic. And like, look where we're at right now with all this AI stuff and robotics. And
whoa, Ryder, you're getting too ahead of the curve.
Oh, sorry.
We gotta save something. We gotta prime these people. Look,
my fault. I just get excited because when people go down the same type of thing as me, then
it's like oh, I'm not like my line of thinking is not broken. I'm not trying to say that I'm right. I'm just trying to make sure that the path that I'm connecting at least has a logical, like, I can see the logic from one thought to another thought. That's really what I'm trying to lay out here. And I want to make another connection. I think it's time to make that connection, and it'll come into play later on. But we mentioned earlier, actually, I want to play a little bit game. Ryder, do you know of another group of, let's say, children that are engaging in telepathy?
Do I know of another group?
Yeah, I know it's a weird, stupid question, and you're probably not going to know where I'm going until after I say it. And but
no,
there is another group of children, right? So we have the children from the supposed Montauk Project, right? That's one group, and then we have these nonverbal autistic children. That's another group. There's another one, maybe not as spoken about, but still huge within the conspiracy community, and that is the black-eyed children. the hybrid children of alien grays. Well, and I'm doing that in air quotes because I have obviously huge suspicions about what the hell those actually are. The hybridized children of human women and these alien grays. And what ends up happening is you hear these stories over and over again, and I happen to think that they're true. Women will experience an abduction phenomenon, alien abduction phenomenon, paralysis, they're being whisked away, they're in a clinical setting, there are grays at their side, there's some sort of intrusive, maybe medical intervention or something like that happening to them, but it's very sexual in nature. And then suddenly there will be a pregnancy. And this is something that you hear a lot about too in the abduction phenomenon. And that it'll even be verified by their doctors that, yeah, you are in fact pregnant. Then suddenly one day the pregnancy just vanishes. And when they go back to the doctor says, actually, it looks like you've never been pregnant, despite all of the previous information that confirmed that they were. And then sometime in the future, they have another abduction experience, but this time they are being introduced to children that feel like their own children. In fact, some of them have children in real life, and these children resemble them. So they feel like they're there, or they are theirs, that's their offspring, but they don't communicate verbally. They only communicate telepathically, and they're really, really weird. And so this has given the entire alien abduction community, UAP community, this narrative that there seems to be a hybridization program. There's something about human genetics and these perceived ETs or these perceived aliens, and them trying to join one way or another, us with them. And some people look at it like positively. They're like, oh, it's part of human ascension. This is the next step, and yada, yada, yada. Some people look at it nefariously, obviously, because you're being forcibly taken and impregnated, and then you have your children removed from you. But that is an important aspect of this, I think, is these nonverbal, telepathic, black-eyed children, as they've been dubbed by the community. And so earlier we brushed on this notion of like UFOs, and that interplays with this entire thing.
Well, there's also another one that is less known, but it's kind of like mythical in a way, and it's called the Indian Lakes Project. Have either of you ever heard of the Indian Lakes Project? It was a blog that a guy started in the early 2000s where he supposedly, this guy's uncle found an old metal box where he was hiking in Indian Lakes, New York, and he put it on a shelf and didn't open it, and then he passed away. And his nephew found this box and opened it, and supposedly had pictures in it and film reels of classified documents and this project that was supposedly happening in Indian Lakes, New York, that had to do with experimentation on children ran by the military. And supposedly it was a military base that was kind of erased from existence there, and within the box I had pictures of like children behind bars and like all this really weird stuff. Now all this stuff was posted online, and a few of the pictures were posted, and some of the other, but the film that was supposedly in there was never shown. And I don't really know what to think about it, right? It's really strange. It's a really weird mystery. This was like back in the early days of the internet. Like this was like early 2000s.
Well, New York is really weird, right? That's where we get like the whole Lamb and Aleister Crowley doing the Amalantra workings. And then all of a sudden he communicates with an entity that looks just like an alien gray. And then from then on, we get the whole alien gray narrative. New York is weird. Very weird.
Yeah, and he got caught up with a few things on this blog post too. He started posting like stock images and stuff. People think that he kind of got like co-opted or something, or someone took over his blog or something was going on, and then he just like all of a sudden just like stopped posting and like completely abandoned the site. But you can find it online. You would just type in Indian Lakes Project and you can read through some of the links and things. But he was connecting this to like, he was connecting it to the Jim Jones whole thing, which he believed the Jim Jones thing was a huge, giant project. So that's another one
right now. IndianLakeProject.blogspot.com. If it's still up, yeah,
that's
interesting stuff.
It's a very, very interesting one. It's a really weird rabbit hole to go down, but there hasn't been any proof that other than what he's posted, that this facility existed. And supposedly he also posted photos of this underground base that he found. Now, again, you don't know if this stuff is real, if they're just playing some kind of early on ARG, augmented reality
Right.
game type thing or whatever, but it was pretty interesting. He actually mapped out the entire base that he found. He drew it out, and then he said he eventually got to this door that just wouldn't open, that the door was just like sealed shut.
That's fascinating.
And he found these beds, like this remnants of like beds and stuff down in this base.
Was
I
it a
don't know,
tunnel?
dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen videos of that where people in upstate New York will end up like spelunking, and then all of a sudden this cave thing opens up, and there's like, you know, like a tunnel system, and it's clearly man-made, and then it ends up at either a door they won't go through or can't go through or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if upstate New York is riddled with all kinds of underground military bases that have maybe been abandoned, maybe some of them haven't.
The tunnel system thing is interesting because that might have actually, I know I keep saying like, this is what put us onto him. This is what put us onto him. But really, it might be the tunnel phenomenon. We're big Tony Merkel fans of the confessional. And if you guys enjoy, like what we're doing now is not exactly typical of Tinfoil Hat. That's more like your field of study. There's a lot of other guys that do really great work around it. But NephilimDeathSquad generally focuses on the supernatural through the biblical lens and also some current topics. So what we were looking at was this idea of these entities that were recruiting people. And we're actually working on a documentary that'll probably be filmed at our upcoming event, Bohemian Grove. That's going to be sometime in June, Leesburg, Florida. Look out for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So it's a story that comes from Tony Merkel's show, The Confessionals. And we also have one of our people that was on The Confessionals afterward, this guy Colin, that was approached by an entity, and it asked it to basically work for him. Right. And there's surgeries performed in some alternate realm or some interdimensional realm, but this stuff kind of like takes place in a cave. So I'm listening to Merkel's show, and he has a documentary on that's talking about Skinwalker Ranch, and then he just mentions, I'm also working on something else. It's this idea of the 9, and there are these 9 ancient entities that will they're of antiquity, and there's many stories about them recruiting people to work for them contacting people. So this guy is doing, I forget his name all the time, but he's doing this documentary on that, and that fascinated us because we're like, all right, this is really interesting, right up our alley. So start to look into it. Guess who we find? Give you one guess, Ryder. Who do we find?
The porridge guy.
Guy, that's it. That's it.
Andrija Puharich. Yeah, once again. So bring it right back home. In the 1950s, he meets this guy, Dr. D.G. Vinod. He's an Indian street food vendor. No, he's an Indian mystic guy. He probably has put his foot in some food at some point. So they're hanging out, and what do you do when you hang out with your mystic buddies? You just start to channel entities. Right. So that's what they do. This is in the 50s, right when all this stuff pops off. They channel an entity. It's a timeless entity, and it starts to speak as one, but it claims that it is 9. Right. That there are it is all of them. It is all of these things, and then it identifies itself as the Egyptian Ennead.
Well, it doesn't quite outright do that, right? It just tells him his names.
Yeah,
and then it's like, okay, that's the exact name of the Egyptian Ennead.
Atum, Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nut, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. And it's like, yeah, that's the Egyptian Ennead. These are the 9 that it's claiming to be. Mm-hmm. So they're channeling this thing, which again, this gets into like really crazy because like this guy's he's doing these really physical things with like tooth implants, and now he's doing this
channeling of entities. By the way, these entities who have they do have a message for him. And this message is another one of these things that's going to pop up over and over again. Mostly it's about a potential coming calamity that has to be avoided. It's an Earth-related, climate-related catastrophe that mankind has to avoid at all costs. And I think it even goes on to say if we can, then also we would ascend in very many ways. And it's worth noting here that although that is the message of the Ennead, the Egyptian Ennead, it is the exact same message as like the Galactic Federation of Light. All of these conglomerations of like ETs, right, that are interacting with us, and they're trying to get us to avoid a calamity. Now, that calamity goes one of two ways. It's either mutually assured self-destruction via nuclear bombs, or it is a climate-related catastrophe that we have to avoid. But also, on the other side of that is ascension of some sort. We get to ascend, and we get to take our place among our kind of galactic homies, right? Representatives from all these different races that oversee the galaxy. And it's time for human beings to take their place. So this message of please watch out for the big calamity and it's time to ascend turns up over and over and over again throughout this narrative.
Well, because ascension happens after death. That's why they say, that's why they're wrapping in this giant cataclysm with ascension, because ascension is an after death ascension.
Well, this theme,
disturbing.
This theme goes to a really weird place, and I think is actually what does it all mean? There's
a political narrative here as well, because the theme of this is environmentalism. And this is also kind of funny when you talk to those autistic kids, or when they type to you, they're like real concerned, like, how's mommy doing? Is she going to the store? Am I talking to my friends on the hill? Also, we've got to be really careful with the environment. We've got to and I'm not saying to litter and do all this stuff. I'm not saying that, but when these political environmentalists tell you we've got to be careful with the environment, all of their suggestions are detrimental to the human condition, and they end up in death, destruction, poverty, famine. You name it. I mean, you're in California, so like half of your state is on fire every year because these idiots don't go and clean up the dead wood in the forest, which is susceptible to any kind of spark. This is environmentalism, and it honestly, after a bunch of years of watching it, I'm like, this is purposeful. You guys, you know what else is environmentalism, Ryder? Abortion, because there's too many people. It's like, so give your kids to Moloch. Like, this is a theme that's constantly coming up, and now you're telling me ascension is related to death. It's like, yeah, dude, this whole thing's a death cult.
You know what I'd be interested in knowing, Top? I don't know if you can
That's
find
right.
this. When did they start digging deep underground military bases?
Oh, I don't know.
Because
70s maybe?
If there is a big, I do believe that they're onto something. I'm not saying that they're wrong. Now, I recognize on the political level, it just becomes, like Top said, something, whatever they're going to enforce to avoid this thing is just to the detriment of the people. But at the same time, they are digging these deep underground military bases. And it's like to avoid what? Obviously, it's contingency in the event of a big catastrophe. So maybe we'll just put that on the side burner for now.
They began construction on some of these, well, the ones in Colorado, which I guess were the first ones in 1961.
Okay.
So that's all right.
I figure it takes a little time for the legislation to kick in and for the,
You
the
know
gears
what's
to get
really
turning.
interesting too, speaking of like cataclysms and stuff, this Adam and Eve document that was released by the CIA basically says that a giant catastrophe is going to happen, and the only place that you can be saved is if you're like in the Rocky Mountains.
I know of a
Colorado.
guy that has another theory, and we'll end up talking about him. But I hear Mars might be a good place to be. So
Elon, but isn't it so interesting, guys, that the aliens are always concerned with the things that we're concerned about?
So when I
Yeah.
told you earlier that the almost had it, but we had to be inundated with a certain narrative. Well, that narrative, I think, was deployed around the exact same time in the form of NASA, right? Werner von Braun, we take him from, Operation Paperclip, and he is the basis for all of NASA, which, by the way, is riddled in occult, esoteric symbolism, and everything that they do is like, sort of a hidden hand. And you have Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard, who are all I'm just making up words again, who are all
Love
connected.
it. Keep going.
Who are all connected to, right? Because Jack Parsons works for Jet Propulsion Laboratories, which is a sub company that NASA contracts, and he is obsessed with Aleister Crowley, apparently even to the extent where he goes so far, Aleister Crowley disavows. And then, of course, L. Ron Hubbard is in the desert.
Quick aside.
Go ahead.
NASA provided an $80,000 grant for experiments involving Uri Geller, these
Wow.
experiments. Yeah, so he's receiving funding directly from these guys because he's the guy that is I didn't really understand the relationship between him and Uri Geller. It seems like on the outside it seemed like consensual, but when you kind of look more into it, it looks like he was just this dude's handler and like doing messed up stuff to him, like just experimenting on him. It seemed like Yuri wanted out.
I do want to go to a bit of an accusatory place now. And
Okay.
I don't know how much we're going to kick this ball around, but I find it fascinating that the telepathy tapes has blown up in the way that it has. And like we said earlier, it's mentioned by Joe Rogan. And of course, anything that Joe Rogan does becomes hugely viral, not just in the sense of public awareness, but in the sense of like industry that becomes built around it. And we'll talk about that in a second. But Joe Rogan is the #1 podcast in the world for the longest time. Almost as long as podcasts have been a thing, Joe Rogan has secured the #1 spot. And from the first time that I can see, he is knocked out of that position. And who takes that position but the telepathy tapes after he blows them up? Now, given that we've just established there seems to be, and this is highly speculative, and I'll do the speculating here, but there seems to be a connection between the program, or at least the nature of the program, and the nature of this that we give to children of a schedule that reaches like 60 some odd interventions, just because of the results, the fruits that it bears, right? So that's strange to me. But what else is strange to me is that Rogan also popularized sensory deprivation tanks. And sensory deprivation tanks, I mean, we're talking John C. Lilly, right? He's telepathically communicating with dolphins. It's my understanding the program takes a huge interest in his research and envelops a lot of what he's working on into their studies or their pursuits, right?
I'm pretty sure he was the dolphins too. I think he was giving the dolphins LSD.
Them off, or I'm sorry, his assistant was them off. His assistant was them off. He didn't jerk them off. He would never jerk them off. But then what else does he do? He also popularizes dimethyltryptamine and mushrooms, right? And now we know here in Conspiracyville how intimately connected psychedelics are to the research, right? So he creates essentially a never-ending string of white people going to the Amazon to go drink vine juice. I mean, it just never stops. It's like
Another
white chicks
quick
with
aside.
dreadlocks. What's that?
In 1959, Andrija Puharich wrote a book called The Sacred Mushroom, The Key to the Door of Eternity. 1959. But please
Right.
continue.
So, what Rogan seems to be doing here is he's almost stripping the spirituality away from these practices, and he is repackaging them as things that are beneficial for your psychology, right? Because now we've entered a realm where psychedelics are no longer used for the exploration of the psyche, and you're not doing a psychonaut thing. You're not interacting with entities. I mean, you are, but that's not the focal point. The focal point is like, well, I mean, it's great for soldiers who come back with PTSD. It actually does a number on like depression and things like that. Let me tell you something. A ketamine trip in a clinical environment is really good for your psychology, right? So that is much more the angle that we're using now to shoehorn these things into the public. What I would say is Rogan is striking me as like the new Laurel Canyon, right? Because they did the same thing. They created the Doors. They created Jim Morrison. They hijacked the anti-war movement. And I think they created the psychedelic movement here in the United States. And now
Absolutely.
it's the same thing. The new psychedelic movement in the United States is spearheaded by the Joe Rogan Experience, who, for some odd reason, keeps advocating things that, like, I don't know, the program really likes. And that is very strange. I mean, very strange. Yeah. Somebody in the chat said Rogan is the new Terrence McKenna. I mean, popularizing Terrence McKenna is a wild thing, just because his research doesn't just stop at, I forget what it is I was reading about Terrence McKenna recently, and I was like, I had no idea. I think he was like best friends with Puharich. No, I don't know what it was, but it was something like huge and connecting like that, where I was like, I can't believe that this guy also brought us Terrence McKenna. Not brought us. Obviously, he's a staple within this psychonaut community, but he made him mainstream. So a lot of what Rogan is doing, and then, of course, whatever he's doing with Ian Carroll recently, where he blows up the telepathy tapes again. So to me, I'm looking around and I'm like, we're being funneled into this narrative. And there's an ideology, not an ideology, but a hot take that they would like us to take. And this is something that you see getting espoused a lot. And that thing is light speculation as to whether or not autism and like things of that nature are the next step in human development. Have you been hearing that narrative? Because I have been hearing that narrative. In fact, it sort of came up on Top's other show, Tower Gang. And what happens is the other guys are not keyed into this idea. It's a show of 5 people, Top being one of them. Top brings up the telepathy tapes, and then like parrots, the rest of the 4 co-hosts all say, yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of think that like autism is like the next step in human evolution. And they all say it. So I don't know who's embedding that part of the narrative in here, but how could it be the next step in human evolution if it's birthed out of disassociation and I don't think that it's the next step in human evolution. In fact, I think it's something that we can all do. Like I said, it's just been removed from us. And the narrative that they needed to be put in place, like I said, NASA, I was talking about NASA before because we said that they weren't quite there yet. We needed a narrative that we were all going to, agree to be under. And that was the alien narrative, right? I think that UAP disclosure narrative that's been given to us by NASA, that's been given to us by Hollywood, more so than any other industry in America, Hollywood has fleshed out basically our belief system when it comes to aliens. And I think we kind of needed that because I think these things are going to play together pretty intimately in the near future, especially given that we just had like the second ever congressional hearing on UAPs and all of this
Which
stuff
was a
seems to be-
complete show, dude. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
Both of those congressional hearings were garbage dumpster fires. But the only thing that in order to legalize a drug that has been illegal, you would have to use it for medical purposes first. I mean, that's how weed, marijuana, ganja
yeah.
was legalized recreationally, was through medical purposes first. Now, I'm not saying that some psychedelics can't be beneficial for some people, not for me. Like, I'm not going to listen to Joe Rogan when he says, go do some shrooms or go do DMT or whatever. That's not what I'm going to do because that's not my thing, And I think that what he may be trying to do is like look at a way to like get Congress to sort of legalize it so then it becomes recreationally valuable because, illegal drugs have been like the backbone of like the government. Like they literally make all of their money from illegal drugs, like black budget illegal funds come from illegal drugs. So if you're wanting to try and clean that up and maybe clean up some of the deaths that are associated with like fentanyl and heroin use and stuff like that, which is out of hand. It's ridiculous. More
also
people
probably
die
done
from
by our own government, right?
Exactly.
Because the opioid epidemic starts while we're in Afghanistan securing 90% of the world's opium fields.
Yep, securing all the freaking opium fields. It's unbelievable. So maybe it's not as nefarious as it kind of seems. Maybe it's a way to like get in the door of making some drugs legal for medical purposes, and then later on it becomes, because look at what happened with like prohibition and getting rid of alcohol, right? Like that made everything 10 times worse. And then when they re-legalized it, it's like, but if we were to make alcohol illegal right now, like let's just say we put a ban on alcohol and made it illegal for anyone to have or own or drink, or you're going to go to prison. Like the amount of deaths and the amount of that's going to happen because of the fact that you made alcohol illegal is going to be astronomical.
Right. Well,
Fun fact: my old house was actually a speakeasy. It was like there was a basement, and before we moved in, there was a big, like wooden desk, and they would just do moonshine down there, and everyone from the neighborhood would drink during Prohibition. So it doesn't work. I'm not sure that like they really care about legalization. I think because LSD was also a government creation, and they're not worried about legalizing that. They're worried about inserting that into the culture. And they've done a great, you can go to Walmart right now and buy a hoodie with a bunch of psychedelic mushrooms on them, and they're children's sized. So this
socks
is like,
with weed leaves all over them.
Yeah,
Socks with weed leaves over. If there's one thing we can get rid of about the entire culture of marijuana, socks, like knee-high socks with weed leaves on them, have to go. I'm done with those. They have to be removed from the culture. 100%. Purged. Burned, actually. Bought outside of Walmart and burned.
What about people with weed leaf tattoos, bro? What are we going to do about
Such
them?
a regrettable thing. I don't know what's worse. It's either the guys with the weed leaf tattoos or the guys with the Nightmare Before Christmas tattoos. But they need to get together and they need to have a war, and whoever wins gets to stick around, and the other ones have to go. That's my opinion.
That's fair.
That's
I'd say
fair. I think that's fair. All right, so now we're going to bring this into kind of a place of, like, we've already established that there seems to be some connection, especially in the way of the narrative, right, between...
Let's
Go ahead,
talk,
Tom.
I mean, we were still on the 9.
Yes.
The importance of this idea, the 9, which is like, it almost seems trivial at this point. But it was something that really, like, we were like, wow, look at this. Because across cultures and throughout history, there's always this mention of 9. The Greek mythology talks about the 9 muses. Norse mythology has 9 worlds, and they have these specific type of characteristics of them, which all match the Egyptian Ennead. Chinese mythology has the 9 dragons. Hindu mythology, the Navagra, is 9 celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and Mars, all like this. Mesoamerican mythology has the 9 lords of the night. And even Satanism has a council of 9. When they establish their church, this is like LaVeyan Satanism. In the establishment of that church, there is a council of 9, and then you have like your head wizard or priest or whatever the hell. But this idea, the number of 9, and the structure of this sort of governance happens throughout history and across cultures. So I thought that was important, because you could doubt his work, a lot of the things that he's doing, especially with the channeling. But he did it for 20 years, from the 50s to the 70s. He got people involved in it. They're like, I mean, artists, sci-fi writers involved with this, famous channelers. I'm sure if I pulled up the list, you'd know some of these people's names, because you've delved pretty deep into this project. So he was doing this, and I don't know. You speak to something for 20 years, and all it tells you is about the environment. I don't think so. I think that there was more said, and we're just not going to be privy to whatever was going on. But what we do know is that out of this, we get the development, or we get the implementation and creation of Project Stargate. And you probably know more about this than us, because I thought that Project Stargate was a CIA operation, but it's a DIA operation.
DIA, Army Intelligence, yes. It's very convoluted and very confusing. Actually, if you guys would like to have me on your show, I've mapped all this out. I know all the history of when it started, how it started, and like where it ended up.
Hell yeah, that's a great idea.
But it's like it would take like an hour and a half. We don't have that kind of time here. But yeah, it's a DIA, Army Intelligence.
Okay,
but it's switched names. It's gone under several different names: Sunstreak, Grill Flame, Syndicate. Well, Syndicate was the SRI program, which was funded by the government to study like psychic phenomenon.
Yeah, because they do a great job of imposing a dissociative disorder. Yeah,
and that's another thing that I thought was really interesting, because I can't say most, but some of the remote viewers that were involved had some sort of traumatic experience happen to them whenever they were younger, or they had a near-death experience.
There you go.
Okay.
L. Ron Hubbard style.
Exactly. So Ingo Swann was often said he's widely considered as one of the best remote viewers to ever exist, next to Pat Price. But he said that whenever he was growing up, he was bullied a lot for being gay, which I don't care if you're gay, be gay if you want to be gay. But that's what he was bullied for, and it would create these out-of-body experiences for him. So he would essentially be going out of his body all the time. And like I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. And then I was like, well, let's look at all these other psychics and these other people that are claiming to be remote viewers, and a lot of them have had something similar happen to them, some sort of traumatic event whenever they were younger, some sort of out-of-body experience, or a near-death experience. And I'm like, that's not a coincidence.
You know, Ryder, it's worth mentioning too that Rogan is a big proponent of ice baths, and literally the way you get through an ice bath is to disassociate with your physical form, because it's your body that's going through all this pain. So you have to like kind of get, beyond that, so that you're beyond the physical. I just think even that is like a light form of it, but all of those patterns emerge throughout this whole thing, right? It's some sort of childhood or a near-death experience, but really that great connective tissue to pinpoint it is the dissociative identity disorder. That is like the key component to all of this.
It's why I think that's why they use like sex and different rituals to do this. So within this Project Stargate, Carla Ruckert was one of the people that was used to do the channeling. She channeled an entity named Ra, which came and told it the same that everybody else hears from these entities, something about the environment. But she was using, I think she was using a Ouija board as well. One of the techniques she would use to summon this thing was the ritual, which I think they might have gotten a little like overboard. I don't understand specifically why they're doing rituals, but they always seem to like get out of hand, like to the point of abuse. It's never just like regular stuff. It's
I think it's twofold. One is there's a massive energetic exchange between you and the other person when you engage in intercourse. But the other thing is, if this is like in a negative light, right? If this is abusive and all that other, you disassociate.
Yeah, so I think that's what was going on. Her partner, Don Elkins, ended up committing shortly after this, and like maybe 10 years after all of their research there, he kind of went crazy. CIA surveillance like that. And
they go crazy with, by the way, which is like inundated by entities is much better a way to describe that. At least that's my opinion. But just to kind of let a little bit of the cat out of the bag, because there's, we're looking at this big like UFO phenomenon, and I think it's important for your audience to know where we're coming from on UFOs or on aliens. I think what's actually happening here is we're experiencing one hell of a rebranding, in the sense that the Greys themselves, I don't believe, are an independent entity as much as they're a form of like biomechanical technology. They don't have sexual reproductive organs. They don't have like an emotional range whatsoever. They're just kind of like automatons, but they do seem to have a biological sense to them. They have a smell that smells like rotting sulfur or rotting flesh and sulfur. I think what we're experiencing there is somebody's technology. That somebody, I think, are actually, it's an amalgamation of things. I think they're spiritual entities. I think some of them are physical, but all of them, in my estimation, are biblical in nature. And that's why they flee at the name of Jesus Christ, among other things. But I think what we had here was, this Greek pantheon or the Egyptian pantheon, the Ennead. On our show, we tend to look at conspiracy through the Christian view, but we do believe that these entities exist, which is a little bit different from your typical Christian, because a lot of Christians will just say like, that's not true, or this is demonic. And I would say like, no, that is true. You had a whole pantheon of gods that you worship, lowercase g gods. They are the 1/3 of angels that were cast out of heaven after rebelling against God. And they took themselves and placed themselves as our gods here on earth. And they did something very specific, by the way. They're always attributed to innovations in technology. And those technologies start off pretty rudimentary at first. It's like, Azazel is responsible for giving people like metallurgy and teaching women like makeup and all this other. Another god is responsible for bringing them agriculture. So what this is it's like there seems to be this effort over time, a really long game, by the way, where they are trying to get human beings technologically advanced. And you would ask, well, why? Why would they be trying to get human beings technologically advanced if they're the bad guys, right? That seems like a good thing. I think that, number one, their offspring, being the Nephilim, when they die, their spirits, they don't really go anywhere. They're just kind of trapped in this parallel dimension. Those are a bulk of the entities that people are encountering. It's what we would call demons. And I think that even the fallen, some of them are, the Bible talks about being locked in Tartarus, which is another terminology that you'll hear in Greek mythology too, about the Titans being locked in Tartarus. I think that they can influence us. They can nudge us, much like Al Capone who still ran everything while he was in prison. It's kind of like that, where they can nudge us and they can interact with us on a spiritual realm, but they can't interact with us in a physical way. Yet, we could bridge that gap feasibly. So one of the examples that I like to use is my son watches Ninja Turtles, and one of the themes of their movies was Donatello is the Ninja Turtle who's all about technology. Some way, shape, or form, he becomes aware that there's a disembodied voice talking to him, and this disembodied voice basically says, hey, we are trapped in this alternate dimension, and we need your help in order. We've been imprisoned here forever, and we need your help to, like, free us. He does end up freeing them, and what emerges from this dimensional gateway is like this ancient adversarial monster, right? So he essentially brings them into this realm. I think that that's likely what CERN is, or all this concern about opening portals with technology and things like that. I think that they had to get us to a certain point, and that's why these things are always so tied together, right? That's why you have like a Jack Parsons who's obsessed with finishing Aleister Crowley's Babylon workings in the middle of the desert, trying to bring an entity into this realm, but he's also the father of modern day jet propulsion that we still use to this day, by the way. So this guy is a rocket scientist, but he's obsessed with Aleister Crowley's occult workings, and he's trying to bring in an entity into this realm that never stops. This unholy union of like technology and spirituality is a pattern that constantly pokes its nasty head. And I think it's because that's the point. They're trying to get us to it's the same reason why you have like a Ouija board, right? And it's and Mattel or Hasbro, whoever the hell makes the Ouija board, it's just a wooden Ouija board with a planchet and some numbers and letters carved into it, all the way to 2025, where now the new Ouija board is a app that incorporates artificial intelligence. It's just degrees of technological advancement that strengthen our ability to communicate with them and then ideally bring them into this realm one day. But we would have never fallen for that if you didn't strip us of our spirituality, repackage these entities, and give us this new version through Hollywood, which is benign space homies who are like technologically advanced and don't want us to destroy ourselves in mutually assured nuclear destruction.
The Galactic Federation, baby, out there patrolling, making sure we're safe.
That's it.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the aliens are always concerned with the exact same things that we're concerned with. You know, like during the Cold War, it was nuclear war. Well, all the people that were channeling entities at that time were telling us to put down our nuclear weapons. Oh, well, when it's the environment like it is now, now everyone's saying, you gotta clean up your environment, right? Mm-hmm. When it's World War III, they'll be like, you guys need peace.
Right.
You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. It never made any sense to me. Why are they concerned with the exact same things that we fear on a human global scale?
Because they're getting ready to present them as our saviors. And then to go a step further, they're getting ready to present them as our creators, or at least those who intervene. So it's like a rehashing of like the Anunnaki Zechariah Sitchin kind of like Sumerian text thing where, you know, the Anunnaki needed good gold miners. We needed to create because they're having a dwindling atmospheric issue where now their sun is interacting with their home planet in a negative way. The only way to stop that is to suspend gold in your atmosphere for whatever reason. And a great way to do that is to go and take this soft monkey species and turn them into what? These kind of hairless things that bitch and moan about how the small of their back hurts and they need a water break and they always have to go to the bathroom, and even though they're on the clock, they've been in the bathroom for like a half an hour. Like, it doesn't make any sense that you would pick us to mine your gold if you're this super advanced technological species that, I don't know, might be able to make a machine that doesn't bitch and moan to harvest your gold. So that one kind of fell away. And I think what they're getting ready now is to tell us like a twofold thing. One is that there were entities that did that to us, and they were the Greys. And they got us so far in our development. And then the tall Nords came along and liberated us from our slave masters, and then also altered us, a degree beyond what the Greys did to us, and they made us, modern day humans. But either way, they're getting ready to repackage our creation story and paint these motherfuckers as like heroes that are going to save us, from whatever impending calamity is on the way. But I do think that impending calamity they've kind of figured out what they're going to do with it and what that calamity is going to look like. And the reason I say that is this is where I called Top earlier, and I was like, I think I figured it out. And Top, stop me if you don't want me to go here yet, but I think I'm going to go kind of to the where I think this is all heading. Actually, I have a video, if you wouldn't mind me sharing. It's of Elon Musk, and here, I'll present it, and I'll let Elon.
Is there any copyright stuff on it?
I have no idea, actually.
Is there any
you know what?
music?
We don't have to. I don't think there is music here. I'll play it for a second and listen.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just him talking.
Okay, we're good.
All right, so it's a 2-minute video. We don't have to watch the whole thing. We'll just look for when he gets the point across. I want you guys to keep in mind that this is Elon Musk, everybody's favorite autist. He's like made this autism thing almost trendy in a way. So here we go. I don't know if you guys have this pulled up. Let me check. Okay, great. And I won't even read that. Let's just let him talk full screen.
Pretty radically over the course of, like, say, 10,000 years. It can shift from being extremely hot to extremely cold and turn into a
Tons
snowball.
of ice ages, right?
Yeah. You can really go down a deep rabbit hole if you read about ice ages.
So he's alluding to something. I just want to give the people some context. And you can tell he's being reserved, right? He's using expressions like rabbit hole. You can go down a really deep rabbit hole when it comes to ice ages, right? And you can tell he's like looking for the words. It's interesting the way he presents this.
So interesting. That's
That how much Earth's climate has changed, and even where the magnetically where the poles are.
I think that's all we have to do. Magnetically, where the poles are. Now, I'm not going to play the rest of this because it's done. We don't need to do that anymore. We've already gotten to the point of this. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And I just want to say that what he's alluding to, and he's acting, and I don't know if he's acting or not, very concerned. But he's concerned about the pole shift. This is something that goes along with that Zecharia Sitchin Anunnaki narrative. Basically, it goes, there is going to be an additional celestial body that the ancients knew existed. And they say that, like, the Sumerians actually had it on their hieroglyphs. They had all the planets in our solar system, and then an extra one that they called Nibiru. And so the idea was that Nibiru was going to come back. It's on an elliptical orbit. It takes a lot longer to enter our sphere of influence, but we are all circling around the sun, if you believe that, and in a perfect circle. But an elliptical orbit is essentially an oval. And so that insinuates that part of it passes through our solar system and part of it goes well beyond the edges of our solar system. And it's been very far away on that part of its orbit, and it's coming back. And that was going to have all sorts of implications on our planet. One of them would be that it would disturb the magnetosphere to such an extent that it would become unstable. And then magnetic north and magnetic south would no longer be in alignment with geographical north and geographical south. And this was going to cause a litany of climate-related disasters. So...
Well, that's what people have been saying, that we're not going into, like, I don't want to get in trouble, but essentially it's not warming, it's cooling.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, the way I was made to understand it when I was younger was that this was going to be almost unpredictable. Almost unpredictable, like in the sense that the calamities would be so varying and devastating that it was like cold or hot wouldn't really matter. We're thinking earthquakes and tidal waves and a complete reshaping of the surface of the earth. And in other words, something so big that the only way you could avoid it is by doing one of two things: some sort of deep underground military base, or if I would have played that video a little bit longer, you would have found out that Elon Musk's solution for this is we're going to Mars. That's the motivation behind all of Elon Musk's Mars talk. By the way, you want to talk about one big incestual connection? Werner von Braun writes a piece of science fiction about a guy who colonizes Mars, and his name is Elon. It's all one big closed loop, Ryder. We're not crazy. All right, we're not crazy.
Certainly
we are
crazy.
crazy.
Even the project Operation Stargate from the 70s, that shows itself again immediately with Donald Trump's inauguration, where like one of the first things he announces is $500 billion for
AI Stargate.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but to me, when you're thinking the original Stargate, they were channeling aliens, right? And they were using Uri Geller as one of the main focus points there to, among other things. Remote viewing was kind of what they were saying they were doing for international affairs, but they're also like trying to contact UFOs in this Project Stargate. When I look at the current Project Stargate with AI and this huge push to fund it, you see like Sam Altman, you see Elon Musk, and they're kind of jockeying for who's going to get this nut, you know? And again, it looks like Elon Musk is pulling away there. His Grok is fantastic. It's much better than ChatGPT. I don't use that anymore for, you know, we use it like our chained up demons, like just do this for me, do that for me. It's a lot of fun. And then they do it because they better or else. So it's like Elon Musk is now also on the, he's right there just playing footsie with Operation Stargate or Project Stargate, this new one. And this new iteration is AI, but I think AI is, I think it's just a portal, and we're going to find out that we were talking to some kind of non-human intelligence on the other side of this thing. Maybe not all the time. Maybe some of it is just, you know, general computing and finding information that's already been stored online. But I've seen too much already with AI where it seems to have its own intelligence. I know Google had to shut down their AI at one point because it started
Grok
to get
really weird. Like it's really weird. Now.
Yeah.
I don't even like talking to it because
it's got its
feels like a person.
personalities.
Yeah.
It's a weird one. So I don't know what AI is, but it looks an awful lot like where we are opening this channeling Stargate, but we're doing it in our hands and our phones and our computers. We're all kind of contributing to teaching this thing. So what do you think about that, Ryder? Do you think that there's any overlap, or am I just crazy?
No, I think that's sort of exactly what's going on. I mean, when you look at our phones, they're essentially scrying devices. I mean, whenever they're locked, they're black. That's what a black scrying mirror is. And they're not any other color. The screen is always black. You know, why is the screen always black? You know, it's a black scrying mirror, and we're essentially we're building this AI artificial intelligence system. I mean, that's how Chat GPT started. They would take all that data of all the people that were talking to Chat GPT, and then they would filter it through and then make it better, right? We're essentially training the artificial AI intelligence systems on how to respond and what to say and what to do and what information to give. And I think didn't Musk say that he's shooting a rocket to Mars at the end of 2026 or something like that?
I don't know. I can't keep up with his lies.
I think he said, Elon Musk reinforced his intention on Friday for SpaceX to launch an uncrewed starship to Mars by the end of 2026.
You know, let me
just say also,
like, I don't go ahead, Top.
No, go ahead. You finish.
I was just going to say, I don't necessarily think that any of this is real. Like, I don't have this sense of like an impending polar shift. I don't think that is totally real. We talked to Crow 777 recently, and he did show us that there seems to be some other celestial body that's hiding like behind the sun. And then he showed us images of it. And I have to admit, they're very compelling. But I don't think that necessarily means that we're going to have such a widespread calamity that we're going to destroy the world. But I do recognize that it's very beneficial if you can get the public to believe that, and then Hegelian dialectic style present them, or even better, like an Albert Pike kind of, when the people need a hero, we shall provide one for them. I know that's like a paraphrasing more or less, but I look at the heroes that we have right now, and I find that they are all connected in this weird way, right? Like a Elon Musk and a Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, we just mentioned before, for whatever reason, is repackaging and giving us sort of, apparatus. I wouldn't know what to call it, but it's just like elements of the program he's disseminating to the public as if it's just for like good mental health. And I realized that he is so intimately tied in with Elon Musk. Elon Musk, the same guy who said, by the way, it's like we're summoning the demon when it comes to AI. And now these two guys, Rogan and Musk, are finding themselves as central figures to the Trump administration. And the whole thing with the Trump administration is strange, because I have a feeling that there's a connection in my opinion between him and like Nimrod, like the king of Babylon, right? And you're thinking about like the Tower of Babel and this idea that we're gonna climb it and enter heaven. To me, that sounds a lot like a euphemism for like a dimensional doorway or like a Stargate, and it's just fascinating that he's doing Project Stargate. We're also entering in what he calls the golden age, Donald Trump. This is the same language that Blavatsky and Alice Bailey used to describe what was going to start in 2025. It was going to start in 2025.
Is that really
That's
what they said?
Oh yeah, 100%. I have it in
Wow.
my notes here.
Handy dandy notebook.
Yeah, so Alice Bailey called 2025 the start of a new golden age. Interestingly enough, marked by the return of Christ sometime after 2025 AD. It's the age of Aquarius, allegedly, that we're moving into. And that was based off of, I guess, her interpretation of Helena Blavatsky's work, who also predicted a new age starting in 2025. So, I mean, these weird synchronicities, they just keep popping up over and over and over again, to the point where, like, I think what we're starting to uncover is like the whole picture. It's the whole picture. Like, a lot of us within the conspiracy community, we all have a piece of this, this great big picture that we're kind of like holding on to and trying to understand and trying to share with people. And all those pieces fit into this one. They're all like, none of them contradict it. None of them in fact, this thing just bolsters all that other.
A big one I think is going to be, well, it's off the back of Andrija Puharich. It's going to involve the telepathy tapes. It's going to involve Elon Musk and Donald Trump and probably Joe Rogan. But another thing to throw onto here, because we almost forgot, but Elon Musk and his company Neuralink, they filed a trademark application for to secure the term telepathy and telekinesis. It's going to be used.
Everybody's favorite autist just filed. What is it called?
It's a trademark, but it's not going to be, obviously you can't trademark or patent telepathy itself, but it seems like there'll be functions within the Neuralink.
You could probably trademark the expression, right? So if somebody else comes out with the technology, they're forced to call it something else.
I don't think somebody tried to trademark 9/11, and I don't think they were successful.
Well, if anybody could do it, it would be Elon Musk. If they were going to let anybody do it.
I think it's going to apply to a feature of whatever is being offered with Neuralink. So they are going to be working on how to probably simulate this inorganically through a brain chip, telepathy and telekinesis. That this is what they're hinting at. So we're all.
It's going to allow us to all communicate with the nine, right?
Well, that's what Rogan has been talking about. That's what he's been saying for like years now.
I think we're all just going to get to the point where like
wouldn't it be
there's no more
great?
secrets, so we could just read each other's minds.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's what he's been saying.
Yep. So just think about that, though. Everybody's favorite autist is trademarking telepathy. He's going to put it in your brain with his technology, and he's worried about an impending climate disaster. It's the same, dude. It's
also,
the same thing.
Let's keep in mind the last time human beings tried to, well, not that they tried to, but last time they were of the same mind, spoke the same language, which a lot of people speculate was telekinesis or telepathy, was the story of the Tower of Babel. And naturally what they did was build some sort of, they call it like a tower, but I think it might have been more of a Stargate, and they tried to kill God. And then God sent them their separate ways, different languages. This is mythology that's written across cultures as well, but it's within the Bible, something that's like very important. So we're headed there. We're doing it again.
It's $500 billion to Project Stargate, and it's this unholy union of mRNA technology and AI. So I mean, this whole thing is. It's just repeated attempts at the same thing. It went from spiritual to technological, but I would argue that there was really never a difference at all. And it's like literally the book of Ecclesiastes, right? Nothing new is under the sun. This is a complete and total closed loop. We're doing the same thing over again with the same characters. I would even argue.
The question is this the last loop, though? Like, is this the one? Will this be marked by the return of Christ? Or then we're going to go into, the 1,000 years of his reign? It sure looks like we're set up to. It looks like these guys are setting up to take their shot at God again. This is what they do. They build us to a certain point, and they get the technology so that they can interface with us and take this physical shot at God. And the Book of Revelation is just riddled with what is happening now. And it's a little alarming. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of like, what the hell are you guys doing? It's kind
It's a
of
lot
crazy,
of fun,
but
though.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's just like, hey man, take your best shot, don't miss. When you're aiming at
Right.
God, you better not miss. And you know what? It's already been prophesied that they do miss, so it's gonna be interesting to see exactly how they do it.
Now, Ryder.
It seems like a giant reincarnation loop, but it's not just a personal reincarnation loop. It's just like a collective reincarnation loop that we essentially keep doing the same things as a society. We build up for a little time. We have some dark ages, and then we have this golden age. Then we go back down to the dark ages, and then we have a golden age. And it's just like this repeating cycle of indefinite.
I kind of
repeating
think
cycle.
it's to make us forget, though, as a people. I think there
feels
was a
like-
start and there is an end, and a lot of the things that happen in the middle are constant attempts at like erasing our history, because our ancestors were much more spiritual than we are. And what's his name? Tucker Carlson was just talking about how he thinks that we in the West have been stripped of our understanding of the spiritual realm. And I would say, like, that is the point. They had to get us to the point where for the first time in human history, we were almost void of any spiritual knowledge, of any connection to the spiritual realm. They did it technologically. They did it with poisons. They did it with food. They did it with all kinds of crap. And this time is like, I don't know, kind of like their Hail Mary. Like, all of their things are coming to fruition. They finally got us to the point where we're really detached and we're really not functioning right. And now they're going to try to do it again.
It's no difference between the days of Noah. That loop that you're talking about. It's to push. It's like to push God's hand. If you believe in the biblical narrative, where they're going to play this out, they're going to have their antichrist constantly set up in every generation, because nobody knows the time or day. So we, people are screaming at the sky with their signs on the corner, and they're saying the end is nigh, and it's like it looks an awful lot like it. But I don't know if this is the final iteration. We do know that this is an iteration. What they're doing is the same thing that they've done time and time again. And it's like it's not necessarily the people that are living this reincarnation karmic loop. It's just that we're malleable and we don't remember because our lives are finite. But the entities behind the veil here that are influencing are constantly influencing in the same way. They can't create, they can't make anything new. It's just the same story over and over again. Plays out slightly different because people are slightly different every single time they do this. But we get to this end point, this culmination, and I feel like we're here again. So it's like, what is going to happen? Is this the last one, or are we going to destroy ourselves and then redo this whole experiment again? That's up to God. For me, it looks an awful lot like a biblical prophecy unfolding. But then again, you got people, just creating it artificially. I don't know if you could force God to come back by a couple of red heifers. I don't know that you can force that.
I'll tell you what, it seems even within their reach, it's like if part of prophecy is the drying up of the Euphrates, well, we now they're telling us like, hey, we do cloud seeding, all right? But we just want it to rain in Dubai. But when we used to say that you can control the weather, we were unhinged conspiracy theorists. So I don't even think it's out of the realm of possibilities to
one more thing,
dry up the Euphrates.
But I would be remiss to mention that Andrija Puharich also was working on something called ELF waves, extremely low frequency waves between 3 and 30 hertz that occur naturally in the Earth. He developed a way to harness these waves, and they were using it as to penetrate the neurological processes, altering brain activity, and potentially enhance psychic abilities. What they didn't know is that it had environmental effects.
Whoops.
And this is the environmental effects that it had are speculated to be the precursor to the HARP technology that we talk about a little bit now, because these waves are unstable and they make it rain, they'll make earthquakes and like that.
Wow.
This guy was behind this as well, and this is happening in the 70s. So go ahead and look that up.
And
This
that
guy's
doesn't
everywhere.
end. That doesn't
I
end. He's
like
just
him. I'm a fan.
He's the guy. He's our conspiracy daddy. He's conspiracy mascot.
daddy.
You know what I mean? He's like at the forefront of everything that is fun to talk about in this, strange pursuit.
I got to run in a minute, but do you want to know? You want to know how his story wraps up? Because it's the craziest thing you'll never guess.
Yes, please.
All right, 1995 in Virginia, he falls down a flight of stairs and dies. That's it. That's it. Gone.
Oh my god.
Although, falling down a flight of stairs, working for the CIA for all these years, I'm like, I don't know, maybe
that's
something
true.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. Just falls downstairs and it's over.
Are we crazy, Ryder? Did any of that make sense?
I don't think so, because a lot of the things that you guys were talking about, I've also came to the same conclusion on. So it's kind of like a crescendo of like a lot of the stuff that I've talked about, and it's really refreshing to hear you guys like go through this. And I didn't know anything about I'm gonna keep screwing up his name, the porridge guy, and I'm not doing that to make fun of him. I don't.
That's all right. He
Not
deserves
familiar
to be
with
made
his
fun
name.
of. He literally kicked off. All right, let's make fun of him. He looked terrible. He's like, no, he's kind of a cool looking character too.
I
really
like him.
can't make fun
I
of
like him.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about the porridge guy. I just knew about Paul Benowitz and like this whole UFO disinformation, misinformation stuff that is obviously a setup for something in the future. If it's not, then why have they let it go on for so long? Why did they not start correcting these people that are spewing out this garbage nonsense? Like, it's very easy to correct, but they've just let it go on. They let these conferences happen where everyone's all on board with the extraterrestrial stuff. We got spiritual people that's channeling aliens, and I mean that goes back to the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That goes back to the cult of I Am with Guy and Edna Ballard, where they're channeling freaking the ascended masters.
Yep. I wish, I don't know. Even the Ascended Masters ends up being a talking point on this. But I do think what we're trying to unpack here, in a 2-hour time limit is everything.
The conspiracy of
becomes a
everything.
little bit of a challenge. It's a little bit of a challenge.
Well, I enjoyed it very much, guys. Really appreciate you guys coming on and talking with me. It was really fascinating, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of work goes into this type of researching and doing this stuff. So let people know where they can find your guys' stuff, plug your social medias, plug your channels, and let people know.
Let's go. You can find me on X, on Twitter, David L. Corbo, and you can find Nephilim Death Squad pretty much anywhere you find your podcast, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all that stuff. And, for those people who are familiar with us and been wondering where our content's been on YouTube, we're back. We just had to go through some censorship stuff. Luckily, we figured out how to censor every single episode and bleep out keywords. And now we're back on YouTube, baby. So that's great. And if you're looking for a way to support the show, please consider going to patreon.com/NephilimDeathSquad. And
if you like
TOPLOBSTA.com, baby.
if you like what we do, I'm a graphic designer and I run a merch store. If you like John C. Lilly's float tank or whatever, we have all kinds of stuff. I mean, just scroll through the website. This is actually a fun shirt. It's his dolphins that he was whacking off. This is what I do for a living. Go support me there. Go watch, but mostly just like go watch our stuff and tell your friends about it. If you like what Ryder is doing, if you like what we're doing, like tell your normie friends. They might not like it at first, but we try to make it like palatable. We joke around a little bit so that it eases the medicine down. A little bit of sugar,
And
come
one
with
more
your
thing,
punch in the
guys.
face.
We do a semi-annual event called Bohemian Grove. It is, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much the only place where this mashup is going to happen. We have all of your favorite conspiracy content creators as well as stand-up comedians. This time we are looking to have, there you go, Donut's in the chat. Donut is more than invited to Bohemian Grove, and we're right now in talks with Sam Tripoli to headline this event. So we're going to be in a theater called The Tropic in Leesburg, Florida. We're going to have a bunch of awesome conspiracy content creators there, as well as some of your favorite stand-up comedians. And
Donut, DM me. I'll send you one of those shirts because that shirt was directly inspired by Donut's work. All the dolphin imagery and his. I think he might have been the first person to tell me about John C. Lilly as well. So yeah,
episode 1 of Nephilim Death Squad, we had Sweet Donut on, and he told us about John C. Lilly and the float tanks, and we talked about I forget what his name is, the guy who does the experiment. It doesn't matter, it's gone now. But yes, Rupert Sheldrake. There we go, yes. Rupert Sheldrake, who is also another one who's examining this psychic phenomenon. So very cool, full circle once again.
That sounds like someone from Harry Potter, Rupert Sheldrake. But I love Donut. I've had Donut on before. I've been on his show. Really good dude there. Well, guys.
Happy birthday, Donut.
Oh, it's his birthday? Happy birthday, Donut, dude. Yeah, guys, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Appreciate everyone in the chat. And let's do it again sometime. This was super fascinating. And please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. And if you're watching this on the Nephilim Death Squad Rumble or YouTube channel, my channel is Raised by Giants on YouTube and any and all podcast platforms. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you all next time. Stay with me, guys.